Okay, so I'm drinking coffee, and I do want to share this live stream on YouTube because I'm just practicing to try and get my computer a little bit more, just to make sure everything is working. I'm going to go to my channel. And basically today's topic is going to be about why being blunt can be a weak spot. Like, I'm not saying don't ever be blunt, don't tell the truth, because, you know, telling the truth can be very powerful. But I guess, okay, so let me get there. Let me make sure I'm muting it. Okay, so let me make sure I'm sharing everything. Okay, that one doesn't seem to be working, so I'm gonna try again. Okay. Okay, so I think I've shared it. So anyway, it's not that I don't think people should never tell the truth. Of course you should tell the truth. I mean, if you don't like something, nobody expects you to pretend to like it. But here's why being blunt can be a complete weak spot in my mind. Let's go to Facebook and see, because I'm a blogger. I don't do share arounds. Like, okay, maybe some people think I'm blunt about that. Like, there's one thing about Facebook that I don't really get. Everybody loves the great share around, okay? So, like, there's this meme that somebody has created. It's not something that they handcrafted, but, you know, they think it's of value because I don't know why. They just do for some reason. Like, they really, truly believe this thing that someone else created, even though it's not their own creation, is like one of the most valuable things that you could be sharing on social media. And I guess, like, to them, that's something valuable. But I guess maybe one area I've been blunt in is that I really hate the great share around. You know, the thing, it's like usually political, sometimes just satire, sometimes a funny thing. But it's something that someone else created and everybody shares it and you see it over and over and over again. And years ago when I joined Facebook, that's not why I joined Facebook. I joined Facebook because I'm a blogger and I like to share content I created. So anyway, but I've always been nice about it. I just am like, I don't like share rounds. But this is where I think being blunt can be a total weak spot. People assume that their truth is everybody else's truth. Like, I've sorted through some really blunt, kind of ridiculous comments that people have made over time, and I'm just like, really? Just because you said it or you think it doesn't make it true. Your reality is not everybody else's reality, okay? Like, I don't know, like, one silly thing was I had someone tell me that they're older than me in years or wiser than me in years, and that was like the most ridiculous blunt thing that someone had ever said. And I kind of laughed it off because I tried to be nice to that person, and they just like kind of like, I don't know, they just sort of dismissed me, and that's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. But being blunt is about you. And there is something on Quora that I think people might want to see about how being blunt is not always a strong suit. Oh, is your weak spot. Okay, just to get some opinions out there. Like, you know, somebody said that it's not always a strength because here you are. You think that how you view the world is just the most important thing. You think the way that you see something is the only way of seeing it, and you just feel compelled just share that information with someone, to be very blunt and out there. And then you kind of excuse yourself. You're like, well, if they took that the wrong way, that's their problem. It's not my problem. It's completely apathetic. It's just too self-indulgent in a way. I'm not saying you can't express your opinion, but when you're to the point that you just say anything that pops in your head because you think that however you feel about a situation overrides how other people feel, then you have dismissed other people. And another thing about being blunt that just isn't correct or can be a weak spot is that, like, we live on a planet. You don't live on an island. You're not by yourself. So perhaps if you're just so blunt, you're so like just telling people where they're wrong all the time, maybe you need to think about, well, what am I doing that might be contributing to the situation? Because you don't just live in a vacuum, okay? If you're always frustrated with someone because they don't do something correctly, maybe you need to look within yourself. Could it be that maybe you're a little micromanaging and that you just have these exact standards that other people don't have? Like if somebody is like real type A and they think people should always do things a certain way, reality is not everybody's type A. So you're going to be running into a lot of roadblocks where you're going to encounter people that are more laid back and more casual, and they're not going to perceive the world the way that you do. And you just feel that they have made an affront to you personally because they didn't know or foresee that they should do things a certain way. And you just have to tell them that. But maybe, just for me, and I think for anybody that thinks, maybe you need to look within yourself and think, well, what am I doing that could be contributing to that situation? Like, how could I build others up? Like, basically, if you want to, like, I'm not saying lie, but why don't you, rather than always look for something negative about someone, why don't you look for something positive that they do that you like? And then, okay, acknowledge that people aren't always going to do things that you like, but maybe there's something that you're doing, that you're contributing to a situation that creates a result that you do not appreciate. So maybe, well, here's an example. Like, let's say someone's just so casual and they like someone else before you met them. Like, I know recently, like, one mistake I made was that I thought, well, this person might eventually like me. But all along, there were always signs that they liked someone else. And if I could go back in time, I just would have completely backed off. But I ended up putting myself in this situation that was just really uncomfortable for me, where I thought, well, maybe because it seemed like we had a good time, this person would change their mind and they would feel differently. But the truth was, every time I spent time with that person, they were always talking about this other person that they just thought was perfect and ideal. And if I could have gone back in time just for myself, I just would have like completely backed away. And I can take ownership for that, but also that person's did things too where they kind of led me on a little bit. But you just have to kind of read the signs of any situation, like whatever it may be. Being blunt really isn't the answer. I think just maybe working on yourself, thinking within, because we live in a very blunt society where there's always somebody that has to proclaim, broadcast how wonderful they are. I think it's actually a hallmark of extreme insecurity. When you have to be that blunt all the time, there's something like lacking within you. Like, what is it that's lacking within you that makes you feel like you're not, like you're better than someone all the time, you know? So maybe you just need to ask yourself, what can you do to be a better person? Oh my goodness, I thought I was live. I really thought my video was live. So anyway, that's why it wasn't public. So I'm going to keep going. Let's see, I'm going to refresh my wall. Let's see, with these Facebook Live things, that's why sometimes it doesn't work, because So try resharing it. I always have these issues where I think I'm live and I think somebody's seen something, but I don't know, they can't see it, so how are they going to view it? So yeah, that's one of the things about going Facebook Live. But YouTube Live, you have to go in and make sure your video is actually live and not set to private. So anyway, continuing on like with being blunt. Let's talk about situations where someone being blunt can hurt your feelings or can hurt someone else. It just does tremendous damage. Because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like, always there's this person that has a really, what is like kind of perceived as a really strong personality where they need to like kind of make a blunt comment, a blunt joke. Like, it's not always strength, okay? Sometimes it's a total blind spot, like completely. So maybe it's time that we soften our edges. Like, for the longest time I thought, oh my gosh, like maybe I'm like, even though I know I'm strong intrinsically, I thought, well, maybe I'm weak because I'm not all blunt and tough as nails like everybody else. But I've begun to view this differently. Blunt people, if they rub one person the wrong way, they might be rubbing other people the wrong way. And their blunt approach to life might not be garnering the result that they would like. Like, maybe there's something that, like, with their extreme bluntness, always having to point out what someone else is doing wrong. And this can be with a myriad of things. It can be political, okay? If somebody is like so invested in their political religion that they have to be so blunt all the time, they have a blind spot. They can't see how anybody else may think about something. It could be about religion. If they think that they're the only one that's right, that's a blind spot. It could be about life. If they think that their worldview is the penultimate, the only way of viewing the world, that's a blind spot. So they may think like, oh, wow, like they're just calling it as it is. They don't worry about what anybody else thinks. But to some degree, you do need to take into consideration what other people think, because maybe you're not getting or garnering the result that you would like because you're just so darn blunt. Like, I'm not saying that you have to kiss up to people. You don't need to be fake, but really, a lot of this bluntness isn't even needed, really, because if you don't like what someone's doing in a given situation, there's always a better way of telling someone that without being completely like, oh, I always do things better than you. You have to realize that everybody has a different life experience. They're going to approach life differently than you do. You can't just assume that everybody is going to see things your way, right? So the weaknesses of being blunt. Let's see. I want to find an article about it, I think. Let's see. Being blunt isn't always as strong. Okay. Like, there's several articles on here, and it says, you know, one of the weak, I don't want to like just read an article verbatim, but a lot of articles, when you type it into Google, they say it's good to be honest. It's good to share your opinion. But one of the biggest weaknesses of being blunt is that you completely erode relationships with people. You make it to where a person isn't going to feel comfortable sharing anything with you, or maybe working with you or doing anything with you, because the way that you view the world is always the best, right? And it's always about you, and it's never about the other person, you know? Like, sometimes in life, you do something that results in a certain event. You have to take ownership for that. You can't just be like, oh, everything I did was perfect. I didn't have a problem. So these are just some of my thoughts on people being blunt.